Hello and welcome to another video from the only channel you need to not only survive the current apocalypse but actually enjoy. And today's video is going to be about the elections, because that's a big thing on people's minds. And I guess this video isn't going to really be about this particular election, just elections in general, and not just American elections, but pretty much any election for anything, anywhere in the world. And the only reason this is even coming up, I don't pay attention to this stuff. Don't care what anybody's policies are. I'm pretty much past that. But I am kind of in the public eye, not for the whole world, but for enough people that it comes up that, you know, who's doing what and, you know, which candidate is the best. And so I felt like this would be a pretty good subject for a video. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about a friend of mine named Tonto that kind of, it's kind of related to elections in general. And also it's just an entertaining story. So hopefully you have had similar experiences and have already come to the same kind of decisions I've come to, or maybe just listening to the information from another person will wake you up to things that you've witnessed yourself, and you'll come to the same conclusions that I have. Anyway, Tonto, I don't know, if I was looking back on it, I have people in my head that I've always thought of as my best friend, and I don't know that I ever thought of Tonto as my best friend, but perhaps we were. We were in a conversation one time about joining the Navy, and me and him both went down and joined the Navy together. So, you know, that's kind of a big deal. Normally, that's your best friend you do stuff with like that. But Tonto, his dad was the janitor at school, and he died when Tonto was like 12 years old. And so Tonto was never going to be very high up on the high school hierarchical system. But it actually ended up that he was. Tonto was the kid that always had broken glasses. He had, and I don't know why the adults in his house didn't do a little bit better job. I know they were limited, but Tonto would come to school with glasses similar to mine. They're black frames, and they'd always have tape right here on the bridge and tape over here on one of the legs, and there'd always be a paper clip through one of the screw holes. And for whatever reason, it was always white tape. So it was not like he even looked normal from a distance. You know, you could tell from no matter where you were that Tonto was really poor. And if you got up close to him, his clothes were always dirty and torn up, or stained and tore up. I don't know that they were dirty. But I would go to his house every now and then. He never came to my house for whatever reason. And it was like going into an alien world. I'd go in there, and I'm not exaggerating, there were at least 12 kids in there at any time, and 3 adult women. And I don't think there were any adult men other than Tonto's brother, and he was only like 16 or 17 at the time. Well, anyway, every time I would go over there, and I don't know that I went over there more than 2 times, maybe 3 times, but every kid in that house would have to come up to me and say, "Hey, white boy, you got some weed?" And so I was very uncomfortable there. I didn't know anything about weed at the time. Still really don't. But one of the things that set Tonto apart, and there's a couple of things that really were strange. He was one of the, like at the lower end of acceptability, and yet no kid, I don't ever remember any kid saying anything mean to him. I never saw him get punched, never saw anybody do anything mean to Tonto. Even the most vicious, vile kids at school would wave to him and say hello. Whereas my own experience was that on a daily basis, well, I would cry myself to sleep at night, because on a daily basis, some kid somewhere would put me in a garbage can, or put me in a locker, or throw my homework in the toilet, or some kind of thing like that. And in fact, that's basically the kind of kids that hung out in our little group at lunchtime. Tonto would always be there, and all these other kids there. But at times, Tonto wouldn't be there. He'd be over talking to the football players, or the cheerleaders, or the chess club, or whatever. Whereas I was pretty much stuck in that group. I couldn't move from that without, incurring some kind of instantaneous retribution. But Tonto was a writer, and for whatever reason, he always had this huge stack of books. You would think that Tonto was too sickly to pick up a single book, but he would be carrying around like 20 pounds or 30 pounds of books all day long. And half of the books in there had nothing to do with school. They probably weren't books he had ever read. And he would have stacks of books that he wrote. And a lot of times it was just old beat-up notebooks. They were always stained. And I never even looked at any of his books. We'd sit there and talk for our whole lunch period, and I'd never ask him, what's in that book. But apparently one day somebody else had one of his books, and I asked him about it, and they said, well, I'm reading this. I'll give it back to Tonto at the end of the day. And I looked into it, and it was completely disorganized literary chaos. It'd be like, the fiendish professor reached into his bag of tricks to reveal the secret weapon, and then Detective Smith, who knew what was going on, would, just crazy stuff. And he had a lot, and they were really explicit sexually. And I mean, it wasn't like he was writing romance novels. It was like you would go from some kind of shoot 'em up scene to a very sexual scenes that were just really, really explicit, like pornography. And in fact, I remember one time my art professor had a couple of those books, and I was thinking, why in the world is my teacher reading this? And I asked him, I was like, what do you think about Tonto's books? He says, well, I've got them in my hand. I don't have them in my hand because I'm reading them. I caught another student with these, and I'm happy that Tonto's creative, but I think as a teacher it's actually a law that I can't allow students to read this stuff. So anyways, that's who Tonto was. And for whatever reason, and I don't remember if it was come into Tonto's head to do this or somebody else, but somebody must have put him up to it. And at first I was worried that they were just gonna do something mean to Tonto, because they made him run for high school president. And it seemed like they had like the valedictorian of the school, some girl, blonde-headed valedictorian girl, ran against him. And they had a meeting. The whole school had to go out in the front, like where the flagpole was. Let this train go by, or do its thing. Maybe it'll be quiet. Okay, back to what we were talking about. For whatever reason, Tonto ended up running for class president, and he was running against like a normal person. And we had all gather in front of the school out by where the flagpole was, and they had a podium set up in front of the main entrance to the school, and each one of them gave a speech. They didn't have a debate or anything, but they were given an opportunity to present their explanation for why we should choose them as class president. And this girl that was in our school got up, and it was a typical high school campaign. And I know you probably, if you went to high school, you went through the same thing. And if you don't remember or you didn't experience that, there's a movie called Napoleon Dynamite, and they kind of portray what high school elections are like, and that's basically the way it goes. But anyway, this girl gets up there, and honestly, I can't remember what she said, but it was the typical stuff, like, if I'm elected class president, all the janitors' uniforms will be the school colors, and if I'm elected president, we'll take spinach casserole off the lunch menu. And that was pretty much her thing, and I guess everybody clapped for her. But then my friend Tonto got up there. Just when he walked up, people started cheering and clapping their hands and laughing. And initially, when he got up there, I had in my head that maybe it's going to go down like the movie Carrie, where they dump a bucket of pig blood on him or something. But I think people genuinely liked Tonto. I'll still run into him every now and then, maybe once every 5 years. I'll tell him, invite him to the house. I'll give him my phone number, and then he never shows up. But if I run into him in town and I say, hey, Tonto, what's going on? You know, a minute into the conversation, somebody else comes in and, hey, Tonto, what's going on? Everybody knows him. Everybody knows he's kind of like a local celebrity. Probably he's got a higher celebrity status locally than I do as sustenance and covering internationally. And it seems like a lot of the guys that I know are like that. If you ever saw a video I made about my friend Frosty, it's the same thing. You know, if you're looking for directions, like how do you get to the post office? They always start with, well, you know where Tonto lives. You go past Tonto. So that's how well liked he is, and I think that's the way it was in high school as well. So people were genuinely enjoyed listening to Tonto's campaign speech. I haven't got a clue what he said. I mean, I didn't have a clue what he was saying when he was saying it, because there was so much hollering and clapping and cheering going on. But I can tell you this, he wasn't promising to take spinach off of the menu. He was probably saying things like, if I'm elected president, I'll make sure that every restroom has got a cigarette machine in it, and I'll make sure that everybody gets paid minimum wage for doing their homework. Because I just can't see Tonto giving the standard speech. And on top of that, I don't think everybody would have been cheering and clapping if he was giving a standard speech. In my heart, I know that Tonto won the election. But the result was that he lost by just a fraction, just a couple of votes. And I really believe that it's, you know, the school administrators simply did not want the picture of our high school president in the annual to be a kid with tore up clothes and broken glasses. And that's basically the way it works. And, you know, you kind of ask, you know, why in the world would they have school elections? You know, what in the world purpose do that serve? It serves the same purpose as algebra and biology and English and all that other stuff. It's to try to mold people into a product, a usable product, and it's to get people prepared for the real world. And that's what high school elections are about, to prepare you for the real world. They want you, first off, they want you to learn that you need to get passionate about elections and really feel that your vote counts. That's the first thing. And you have to do this knowing that no matter how you vote, they've already chosen who's going to rule over you. Also, they have to kind of desensitize you to the fact that politicians are going to promise you the world, and from the instant that they are elected, all of that goes out the door, and nobody cares. You know, and the whole thing is scripted. You know, it doesn't matter who you vote for and what they promise. When they get in there, they're handed a script of what to say. If you don't believe me, watch a president when they're talking and the lights go out and the teleprompter turns off. These people, they haven't got a clue of what to say. They're told what word for word what they're going to do for 4 years. Maybe they tell them in advance for the whole 8 years, because it seems like it's a regular pattern that once these guys get in, they don't get out until they're pretty much too old to do anything else. And yeah, that's what high school elections are about. They're to show you that it's your patriotic, civic duty to participate whole hog, and then when it's over with and it all proves to be a fiction, act like nothing's wrong. Now, that's part of it. That's why I am not at all, why I don't get involved in elections. But there's a little bit more to it than that. When me and Tonto did go into the Navy, I guess first thing we got separated right off the bat, but first place I went was boot camp, and then I went to A school, and then I went to my first ship, and then I went to nuclear engineering school, then I went to another ship, and about that time, elections came up. Well, I had already seen, you know, I knew that high school was all lies and all evil, But I had to get out into the world and see what the military was like. And once I realized that military is just an extension of high school, well, I was no longer interested in any of their programs. I never participated in the high school elections. I wasn't going to participate in a carbon copy grown-up version of it. So, but we had an election. And here's another thing about it is, you know, when you're in school, no matter what the high school hierarchy is amongst the students, the real hierarchy is the children and then the teachers. You know, it's not like a child would outrank a teacher or anything like that, because that system is in place and it's unbreakable. There's a glass ceiling, you know, and in the course of your time as a student in high school, you're not going to outrank a teacher. And basically that's the way the real world works. But those little individual hierarchies that exist inside of that system, if you look at them, they're supposed to be based on the person who does the most work, the best work, the smartest, the brightest, the strongest, always rise to the top. And those who are pretty much useless stay right where they belong, at the bottom. But I've always thought of myself as relatively smart, and I think I've proven in my life that I can do a lot of stuff. You know, I can build houses, build cars, repair things, debate anything. But that's not really the way the hierarchy works. When you're in the military, in general, say like I was on a ship, if you were to break it down, everybody knows there's a captain, and then there's the executive officer, and then there's all his officers below that, and then they are responsible for the chiefs, and the chiefs are responsible for the guys at the bottom. Almost without exception, the stupidest man or the most worthless man on the ship is the guy driving the ship. Now, people look up to him because he knows how to drive a ship, and then on our ship, he got there by being a pilot. So these are guys that are super athletes, really able to perform unique tasks, but they still are. They're really stupid. You can't have a conversation with them about love. You can't talk to them about how to care for the earth or how wonderful it is to watch animals, or, you know, because they're not really people. They're not humans. They're citizens, and all of humanity is washed out of them. Whereas if you get to the bottom, it's not really that bad, although there are quite a few people at the bottom that are completely inhuman. And the reason for that is you've got guys that are just recently joined. They're going to be at the bottom, but they're not going to stay at the bottom long. If they're insanely evil, it won't take long at all for those people to outrank you, no matter how long you're there. And that's the way human civilization works. The military is a major part of America. It represents America. The way it functions is the way America functions. And so when they had elections, the first election that they had when I was above 18 years old, I didn't participate. Now, I saw the tables, and I saw that there were some people going up there and filling out their paperwork and casting their vote. But it wasn't too many people, and it really was the people that were really just not too smart. And but it gave me hope that humanity was salvageable. But the reality is, I think a lot of people just recognize themselves as of no worth. And so maybe they don't feel like that it makes any sense for them to take on this important task of choosing the next world leader or whatever. And and then again, maybe a lot of people are hip to it. Maybe a lot of people know that nobody cares about the vote, or they know that no matter how they vote, the guy that gets elected is just going to do what he's told to do by the people that rule the world. And you know that if the captain of the ship is evil, that whoever gets to be president has to be more evil than the captain of the ship. And then whoever it is that chooses those candidates, you know, the people like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, they've got to be more evil than that. But at the same time, these are all just simple human beings. The true evil lies in the people who control the whole system, and those people are the demons. It's not even fleshly beings. And they're not going to allow you to determine who gets to be your ruler. They're the ruler. They're not even going to let you choose who their next spokesmodel is. That guy that's up there, is chosen at birth or shortly thereafter, and there's not a thing that you're going to do to alter that decision. Now, a lot of people watch all of my videos. They know that I understand that civilization is about to reach its climax and come to an end. And without going in, I've got plenty of videos about why that's the case. But for the general population, I think just watching how the world works and the changes that have been taking place in the last few years should be more than sufficient to let you know that something is up. Now, we've got a history, and I don't know, it seemed like the last time I checked we had 44 presidents, a history of 44 presidents. And if this guy that's the president now is 44, that means we have a history of 43 insanely wealthy white male genocidal maniacs. So they've never ever stepped outside of that pattern. That's who gets to be president. They don't let women be president. They don't let nice people be president. They don't let people of color be president. And last election we had, or the last time they chose a new president, it was a guy that was black. And honestly, when the little bit I've ever heard him say was really, really well written, and I could see why people would put their hopes in him. But we live in one of the most racist countries on the planet. Seeing a black man become president over a white patriarchal society is completely illogical. And, you know, here's the thing. When I'm looking at two candidates and they're both insanely wealthy, genocidal maniacs, I really don't concern myself with what gender or color they are. But I guess for people who believe in the system, just seeing that little bit of difference gives them some kind of hope. So this time around, we've actually got a woman and a man running. And I guess that's why it's so important to the empire to make sure that everybody is a racist or a sexist. Because when you finally do get a choice, it makes you feel like you got some hope. Now, I guess that for most people, the general population believes that society is run by some kind of system of rules, what they call a rule of law. And that according to that rule of law, it don't matter how rich you are, don't matter what religion, what gender, doesn't matter if you're, it just doesn't, there is no distinction. The most powerful man in the world is subject to the same laws as the poorest man in the world. At least that's the religious belief of people that are willing to submit to civilization's way of doing things. But I know for a fact that if you're in a Hollywood production and you read more than one or two words on a script, that by law you have to be a member of the Screen Actors Guild. We have had, say, if I'm correct, and we've had 44 presidents. Out of 44, only one president had a Screen Actors Guild, and that's Ronald Reagan. That means we have had 43 illegitimate presidents since they started this country. And if we're going to look at how a lot of people are able to accept this system that we have, and how good people are drawn into it, then we have to just ask, what is the general consensus? Why is it that so many people vote who seem like rational, good people? And for the most part, they will tell you, and this is almost universal, they feel like it's their Christian duty or their civic duty to vote for the lesser of two evils. Now think about this. If you're voting for the lesser of two evils, you're still voting for evil. That's the first point that's important to think about. You're voting for the lesser of two evils. You're voting for evil. You're not voting for good. Why would you want to involve yourself with that? Secondly, if that's what everybody is doing, then why is it that every single election ends with the greater of two evils winning? And if that's the case, what makes you think that voting for the lesser of two evils this time is going to work? Oh well, as always, if you don't want to survive, don't listen to me.